The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Westmore Hotel cast dancing lights across hundreds of elegantly dressed guests. Natalie Brooks stood backstage, smoothing down her simple black dress that had cost her half a month's salary. She could hear the murmur of voices from the ballroom, the clink of champagne glasses, the soft music that accompanied New York's elite charity gala. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her presentation notes. 3 years of work at Hope Foundation had led to this moment. Tonight, she would present their new community development program to potential donors who could change everything. These people sipped wine that cost more than her monthly rent while she fought daily to provide basic meals for struggling families. The presentation, Natalie took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The spotlight found her immediately, and she blinked against its brightness. Hundreds of faces turned toward her, some curious, most politely disinterested. They were here for the social event, not the cause. Good evening. My name is Natalie Brooks, and I direct the community programs at Hope Foundation. She kept her voice steady despite her nerves. 3 years ago, I met a single mother named Teresa who was working 3 jobs but still couldn't afford to keep her lights on. Today, Teresa owns a small bakery and employs 5 people from our community training program. She clicked through her presentation, showing real faces and real stories. Not statistics or charts, but people. Children who now had after-school programs, elderly residents who received hot meals and companionship, families who found stable housing and job training. This is what your donations create. Not just numbers in a report, but actual lives transformed. Real hope in communities that have been forgotten. The skeptic from the 3rd row, a man, raised his hand. Natalie hadn't noticed him before, but now she couldn't look away. He sat with the casual confidence of someone used to being the most important person in any room. His tailored suit probably cost more than her car. Dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to calculate the worth of everything they saw. Vincent Mercer. She recognized him from business magazines. The youngest self-made billionaire in the city, is known for his ruthless business tactics and his complete absence from charity events. What was he doing here? Miss Brooks. His voice carried easily across the room, smooth and challenging. Your stories are touching, but how do you measure actual impact? How do you ensure donations create lasting change rather than temporary relief? The room went quiet. Other guests shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the polite applause and easy checkbook charity they expected. Natalie met his gaze directly. We measure impact through employment rates, educational advancement, and family stability over 3 to 5 year periods. But more importantly, Mr. Mercer, we measure it through human dignity restored. You can't put that in a spreadsheet, but you can see it in a mother's eyes, when she can finally afford to buy her child new shoes. The unexpected challenge. Vincent leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at his lips. Pretty words, but dignity doesn't pay bills. Real change requires systemic economic transformation, not feel-good community programs. Natalie felt heat rising in her chest. This man, sitting in his $1,000 suit, dismissing the work that meant everything to her. And you've created this systemic transformation from your office tower? Forgive me, but when was the last time you actually saw how real people live? The room gasped softly. No one spoke to Vincent Mercer that way. His smile widened, but his eyes grew colder. I built my company from nothing, Miss Brooks. I know exactly how real people live. Then come see what we do. Natalie surprised herself with the boldness. Spend 1 day in our programs. See Teresa's bakery? Meet the families. Then tell me we're just providing temporary relief. Vincent stood slowly, buttoning his jacket. One day, he walked toward the stage. I'll do better than that. 1 dinner, Miss Brooks? You and me. You convince me your approach actually works, and I'll write a check for whatever you need. But if I'm right, you consider that maybe there are better ways to help people than making them dependent on handouts. Natalie's heart pounded. This wasn't what she'd intended. But looking at his challenging expression, his absolute certainty that he was right, she found herself nodding. 1 dinner. When? Tomorrow night. I'll have my driver pick you up at 7. He pulled out a business card and placed it on the podium. We're something comfortable. We're not going to a place where people measure worth by dress codes. The agreement Vincent returned to his seat as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The gala continued, but Natalie barely noticed. She finished her presentation on autopilot, answered questions she couldn't later remember, and accepted polite congratulations from donors who promised to consider their options later. Standing outside the hotel watching the city lights, Natalie stared at Vincent Mercer's business card. What had she done? She'd challenged a billionaire known for crushing opponents in business deals. She'd agreed to have dinner with a man who clearly thought her life's work was pointless. But something in his eyes had caught her attention. Beneath the cynicism and the challenge, she'd seen something else. Pain, maybe. Or loss. Something that made him need to believe that charity was useless. That only money and power created real change. Natalie tucked the card into her purse. Tomorrow night, she would show Vincent Mercer something he'd clearly forgotten. That money could buy many things, but it couldn't buy the human connection that truly transformed lives. She had no idea that one dinner would transform her own life in ways she never imagined. That the man who challenged her beliefs would become the one who understood her dreams better than anyone. That by morning, everything she thought she knew about success, purpose, and love would be completely different. The city hummed around her, full of millions of stories intersecting in unexpected ways. Tomorrow night, hers would collide with Vincent Mercer's, and nothing would ever be the same. Natalie stood outside her apartment building at exactly 7 o'clock, wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater. She'd spent 2 hours deciding what comfortable meant for dinner with a billionaire. The black car that pulled up was sleek, but not ostentatious. The driver stepped out, nodded politely, and opened the door without a word. Vincent sat in the back seat, also in jeans and a simple black shirt. It was jarring to see him without the armor of his business suit. He looked younger, almost approachable, Miss Brooks. He gestured to the seat beside him. Ready to prove me wrong? Natalie slid in, her confidence from last night wavering slightly. Ready to open your eyes, Mr. Mercer? Vincent. He corrected her as the car pulled into traffic. If we're going to debate philosophy over dinner, we should at least use first names. The car drove through the city. But instead of heading toward the upscale districts Natalie expected, they moved deeper into Brooklyn. The buildings grew older, the streets more crowded with real life. Corner stores with flickering signs. Small restaurants with steamed windows. People heading home from work, carrying groceries, holding children's hands. Where are we going? Natalie asked. Somewhere that serves the best food in the city. Vincent looked out the window. And somewhere that reminds me why I do what I do. Rosa's kitchen. The car stopped in front of a tiny restaurant wedged between a laundromat and a hardware store. The hand-painted sign read Rosa's Kitchen in cheerful red letters. Through the windows, Natalie could see mismatched chairs, plastic tablecloths, and walls covered with family photographs. This is your idea of dinner? She couldn't hide her surprise. Vincent's expression softened in a way she hadn't seen before. Rosa taught me that success means nothing if you forget where you came from. He opened the car door himself. Go on. Thursday nights, she makes her errors con pollo. It's better than anything you'll find in Manhattan. Inside, the restaurant smelled like garlic, cumin, and home. An older woman with silver hair and warm brown eyes looked up from the counter. Her face lit up when she saw Vincent Mijo. She hurried over, pulling him into a tight hug. You finally bring a girl to meet me. It's about time. Natalie watched Vincent hug her back, genuine affection in the gesture. This powerful man who commanded boardrooms was someone's Mijo. Someone's adopted son. The story behind the walls, they sat at a corner table. Rosa brought them plates piled high with saffron rice, tender chicken, and beans that had been simmering all day. She winked at Natalie before returning to the kitchen. You come here often, Natalie observed, watching how comfortable Vincent seemed in this simple space. Every Thursday for 12 years. Vincent took a bite of rice, closing his eyes briefly in appreciation. Rosa found me sleeping in the alley behind her restaurant when I was 19. I just arrived in New York with $200 and nowhere to go. Natalie set down her fork, surprised by this revelation. The business magazines never mentioned that part. They wouldn't. Vincent's voice grew quieter. I don't advertise my past. Rosa fed me, let me wash dishes for cash, and told me every night that being poor wasn't the same as being worthless. When I made my first million, I tried to buy her a new restaurant in a better neighborhood. She told me this neighborhood was just fine, and people here needed good food more than rich folks uptown. Why tell me this? Natalie asked softly. Because you challenged me last night. Vincent met her eyes. You asked when I last saw how real people live. The truth is, I see it every week. I just don't believe charity is the answer, because charity didn't save me. Rosa did. One person caring enough to see potential instead of poverty. Natalie's turn, they ate in companionable silence for a while. The restaurant filled with regular customers. Families, construction workers, still in dusty clothes, elderly couples holding hands across worn tables. Rosa knew everyone by name. So what's your story? Vincent asked. What made you dedicate your life to Hope Foundation? Natalie wrapped her hands around her water glass, the cold grounding her. My father lost his job when I was 14. Manufacturing plant closed down. He tried everything to find work, but nothing lasted. We lost our house, lived in a shelter for 8 months. Vincent listened without interrupting, his full attention on her words. There was a woman who volunteered at the shelter, Mrs. Patterson. She wasn't rich, just a retired teacher. But every week she came, helped kids with homework, listened to parents, connected people with resources. She saw my father getting depressed, losing hope. One day she brought him information about a retraining program. It took him 2 years, but he became a medical technician. We got an apartment again. I got to finish high school, and Mrs. Patterson, Vincent asked. She died 3 years ago. Natalie smiled through the sadness. I spoke at her funeral. There were over 300 people there. All of us she'd helped in small ways over the years. That's when I understood. You're wrong about charity, Vincent. It's not about making people dependent. It's about one person caring enough to help another person see their own worth. The walls. Come down. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its challenging edge. I built my company believing that money and power were the only things that created change. That being successful meant proving I didn't need anyone's help. And now? Natalie asked. Now I sit here every Thursday and let Rosa feed me, because some part of me knows that success without connection is just expensive loneliness. He smiled, but there was sadness in it. I've dated models and socialites. Women who wanted the billionaire, not the man. I've closed deals worth hundreds of millions. But I can't remember the last time I had a conversation that actually mattered. Natalie felt something shift between them. This wasn't the arrogant man from the gala. This was someone who'd built walls so high to protect himself that he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. Rosa brought them coffee and flan, refusing payment as always with Vincent. The restaurant emptied until they were the last customers. Hours had passed without either of them noticing. They talked about everything. Vincent's first failed business venture that left him sleeping on park benches. Natalie's scholarship to college and the pressure to prove herself worthy of the opportunity. His fear that success meant betraying his roots. Her worry that she'd never do enough to honor Mrs. Patterson's legacy. I have a confession, Vincent said as they finally prepared to leave. I didn't actually come to the gala to donate. I came because my board insisted I needed better publicity. I was planning to write a small check and leave. Natalie laughed. I have a confession too. I nearly didn't present because I was terrified of all those rich people judging me. Look at us. Vincent stood, offering his hand to help her up. Both so afraid of being seen for who we really are that we almost missed this. The word hung between them. Heavy with meaning, the morning light outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. They'd talk through the entire night. The driver had been dismissed hours ago. They walked slowly through the quiet streets, neither ready for the evening to end. I was wrong, Vincent said suddenly. About charity, about your work. One person caring can change everything. Rosa proved that to me, and I forgot, and I was wrong about you. Natalie admitted. I thought you were just another rich man who'd forgotten real people existed. They stopped at a corner where the rising sun painted the buildings gold. Vincent turned to face her, his expression open in a way she suspected few people ever saw. Natalie Brooks. I came to dinner planning to prove you wrong. Instead, you reminded me of something I'd lost. He took her hand carefully. By morning, my entire perspective has changed. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. Mine too. The city woke up around them. Delivery trucks rumbled past. Early commuters hurried toward subway stations. But Natalie and Vincent stood still. Two people who challenged each other and found something neither. Expected connection. Understanding. Beginning of something that felt like it could change both there. Lives the coffee shop near Natalie's apartment. Was just opening when they arrived. The owner, recognizing Natalie from her morning routine, smiled knowingly at the sight of her with someone. They sat by the window, watching the city come alive with the new day. Vincent had been quiet during the walk, his expression thoughtful. Now he looked at Natalie with an intensity that made her heart race. I want to make you an offer, he said carefully. Not because I lost our debate, but because you made me remember something important. Natalie wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. Waiting. I've been building wealth for 15 years, thinking that was the point. Making more money, acquiring more companies, proving I was someone who mattered. Vincent leaned forward. But sitting with you last night, talking about Rosa and Mrs. Patterson and real impact, realize I've been measuring the wrong things. What are you saying? Natalie asked softly. I want to fund Hope Foundation completely. Not just a donation, but full operational funding for 5 years. Salaries, programs, expansion into other communities. Everything you need to do the work properly without constantly begging for money. Natalie felt the air leave her lungs. 5 years of funding would mean stability they'd never had. It would mean reaching thousands more families, creating programs she'd only dreamed about. But there's more, Vincent continued. I want to be involved. Not just writing checks, but actually working with the programs. Learning from you? Using my business experience to help scale what works without losing the personal touch that makes it matter? The fear Natalie stood abruptly, walking to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, overlaid with the waking city beyond. This was everything she'd worked for, everything Hope Foundation needed. So why did fear grip her chest? What's wrong? Vincent came to stand beside her. I thought you'd be happy I am. She turned to face him. That's what scares me. Vincent, 12 hours ago you were a stranger, challenging my life's work. Now you're offering to change everything. How do I know this is real? How do I know you won't wake up tomorrow and realize this was just an emotional night and pull away? Vincent reached out, gently taking her hands. Because I haven't felt this awake in years. Because for the first time since I made my first million, I remember why I wanted success in the first place. Not to prove anything, but to make a difference. The truth between them, they sat back down. But Vincent didn't let go of her hands. The morning light made his dark eyes seem warmer, less guarded. I need to tell you something else. His voice dropped lower. Something I didn't plan on saying, but after last night, I can't not say it. Natalie's pulse quickened. When I walked into that gala, I was empty. Successful, wealthy, and completely hollow inside. I'd convinced myself that was just the price of ambition. Vincent's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. Then you stood on that stage, passionate and real and fighting for something bigger than yourself. You challenged me. You saw through the money and the power to the person underneath. Do you know how rare that is? Natalie felt tears building. Vincent, we just met. I know. And maybe I'm crazy. Maybe one night of honest conversation doesn't mean what I think it means. But I watched you talk about Teresa's Bakery with more pride than I've felt closing billion-dollar deals. I listened to you describe Mrs. Patterson's legacy, and I wanted to be someone who could inspire that kind of devotion. He squeezed her hands gently. You didn't just remind me why charity matters. You reminded me what it feels like to care about something beyond profit margins. The decision Natalie blinked back tears. Her heart torn between hope and caution. I've spent 3 years building Hope Foundation on determination and pennies. I've fought for every grant, celebrated every small victory. Taking your money, Letting you into this work, it changes everything. Is that bad? Vincent asked quietly. It's terrifying. She admitted, because it's not just about the foundation anymore. Last night, talking with you, seeing who you really are beneath the billionaire image, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Connection. Real, honest connection. And if I say yes to your offer, I'm not just accepting funding. I'm accepting you into my life in a way that could either be amazing or devastating. Vincent stood, pulling her gently to her feet. Natalie Brooks, I can't promise this will be easy. I'm difficult, driven, and I've spent years building walls around my heart. But I can promise that I see you. Not as a charity director or a project or a way to improve my public image. I see you as someone extraordinary who made me want to be better. The coffee shop bustled around them with morning customers, but they stood in their own quiet moment. Natalie looked at this man who had challenged her, debated with her, opened up to her, and offered her both professional dreams and personal hope. Okay, she said softly. Yes to the funding. Yes to the partnership. Yes to seeing where this goes. Vincent's smile transformed his entire face. The guarded billionaire disappeared completely, replaced by someone vulnerable and hopeful and real. There's one condition, Natalie added, her own smile breaking through. You have to come with me to meet Teresa and the families in our programs and actually get your hands dirty in the work. This can't just be checks and board meetings. I wouldn't want it any other way. Vincent promised new beginnings. They left the coffee shop as the sun climbed higher, painting everything in shades of gold. Vincent's driver had returned, but Vincent waved him away. They walked through the morning streets, planning and dreaming and discovering each other. By noon, Vincent had called his lawyers to begin setting up the foundation funding. By afternoon, Natalie had gathered her small staff to share the impossible news. By evening, they were back at Rosa's kitchen, introducing the older woman to their partnership and watching her knowing smile. I told you, mijo, Rosa said, squeezing both their hands. Success is nothing without someone to share it with. That night, standing outside Natalie's apartment, Vincent kissed her softly. It was gentle, careful, full of promise. One dinner. Natalie whispered against his lips. You said one dinner to prove your point? I was wrong about what needed proving, Vincent replied. I thought I needed to prove charity was pointless. Instead, you proved that caring about people, really caring, is the only thing that matters. 6 months later, Hope Foundation had expanded into 3 new neighborhoods. Vincent attended every community meeting, learning names and stories. He'd given up his corner office twice a week to work directly in the programs. Teresa's bakery had become a training center. Mrs. Patterson's legacy lived on in every family they helped, and Natalie and Vincent had learned that. Sometimes the most unexpected connections become the strongest bonds. That wealth means nothing without purpose. Purpose means everything when shared with someone who truly sees you. They stood together at another gala, this time as partners in every sense. Natalie wore a dress Vincent had insisted on buying, though she'd made him donate an equal amount to the foundation. He wore a suit, but kept his hand firmly in hers. Ready to ask for more donations? He teased, ready to show them what real impact looks like? She corrected. Because one dinner had changed everything. Not the restaurant or the food, but the honest conversation between 2 people brave enough to challenge each other and vulnerable enough to connect. By morning, their entire lives had shifted, and together they were building something that mattered more than money or success or power. They were building hope. Real, tangible, life-changing hope. One person, one family, one community at a time, and they were building love. The kind that grows from mutual respect and shared purpose. The kind that transforms not just individual lives, but the world around them. Vincent had taken Natalie out for one dinner. By morning, both their lives were different. And every morning after brought new possibilities, new dreams, and the absolute certainty that sometimes the greatest wealth is finding someone who helps you become the person you were always meant to be. The end.